One of the things Scott said, though, is, again, existing housing, people that own their homes, we're going to keep them wealthy. We're going to keep those prices up.
Trump claims he's worked wonders on the housing market, but even his once trusted media Fox ally disagrees.
Comment on this, please. This morning we had a read on existing home sales in January, down 8.4%, only 3.9 million houses being sold per year. What does that tell you, Pierre? That was a very dull and slowing housing market report.
Home prices just continue to smash records. New numbers out today show that nationally, home prices increased by 6% year over year. In April, we continue to see a situation where despite high borrowing costs, home prices go up and up. There's just not enough supply out there to keep up with all that demand. Some cities are seeing even bigger price jumps. We've seen a jump of 10% for San Diego, 9% for New York and Chicago. And listen, this just continues to be a divide between haves and have-nots, right? If you own your home, this is good news because it's boosting your net worth. But we know a lot of people are on the outside looking in. They want to buy, but they can't, not with these prices.
Trump has a major housing problem. The housing crisis is so alarming. The fact that a working person, a young American, can't do something as simple as own their own home in America. The quintessential American dream. Well, Trump's description of this, one, he says he doesn't want to decrease housing prices so that way somebody who doesn't work very hard can afford their home. He disparages the exact people who would need his help, people who do work and do work hard. But the fact is the housing prices have gone up and up. He doesn't want to destroy the wealth of the people who own their homes, they say. And there has been some criticism that perhaps he's talking about the boomers, but most likely he's talking about his oligarch friends, the private equity who snatched up homes during the 2008 housing crisis and didn't stop buying homes. The young American worker is having a hard time buying a home, not necessarily because their grandparents can't and won't sell their home, but because Blackstone owns those homes. And those homes are now part of a portfolio that is sold on the stock market. So Trump, who never cares about the American people, isn't worried about the value of that grandparent's home going down. He's worried about the value of Blackstone's portfolio going down. That's the anger that should be directed, not toward us, whether or not we buy a home or we don't have a home, and pitting each other against ourselves like Trump always likes to do. No, it's always an us against them. I mean, even Lutnick came out and said how, people for their retirement own 5 to 10 homes. Well, I don't know who he's talking to, but most people that we know aren't buying 5 to 10 homes for their retirements. Again, he's talking about investors who buy a collection of homes. And it's those investors who could get hit if indeed housing is a more reasonable price, or if indeed there are more homes to be able to be purchased by that, yes, hardworking young American.
One of the things Scott said, though, is, again, existing housing, people that own their homes, we're going to keep them wealthy. We're going to keep those prices up. We're not going to destroy the value of their homes so that somebody that didn't work very hard can buy a home. We're going to make it easier to buy. We're going to get interest rates down. But I want to protect the people that for the first time in their lives feel good about themselves. They feel like that they're wealthy people. And I want them to understand it. There's so much talk about, we're going to drive housing prices down. I don't want to drive housing prices down. I want to drive housing prices up for people that own their homes. And they can be assured that's what's going to happen.
We are going to give guidance at some point to see what is a mom and pop that someone, maybe your parents for their retirement, bought 5, 10, 12 homes. So we don't want to push the mom and pops out. We just want to push everyone else out.
Now, Trump's own immigration policy is also hurting and exacerbating the housing crisis, because when he tries to round up immigrants, he is rounding up essential workers. So many immigrants work in construction. Builders are saying that they are having a labor shortage. Not surprising, because in addition to building more housing, there's also other existing construction projects that are ongoing in cities and states across the country.
Let me first say, I'm coming at this as an economist. That's my lane.
Understood.
So I'll talk about the economic effects, but I think those are dwarfed by just the visceral effect as an American looking at these images. I think that effect is far more important and far bigger than I think what's going to sound like pretty modest economic effects that I'm about to discuss. So with some colleagues, we put out a report not so long ago where we think that it's more than likely that as a result of this immigration policy, we will have negative net migration, which is to say more people leaving the country than entering the country this year for the first time in many decades. And that's going to mean a smaller economy. And that's going to mean a labor market with numbers that are going to be not so recognizable, really startling labor market numbers as we go forward.
Well, and we've seen that in the past several jobs reports. When we're thinking of the share of the foreign-born workforce, that number is going down, and it's going down substantially, raising the question of who replaces those workers. Wendy, who can, who's willing to?
So let's first step back a bit and talk about what's probably happening in the labor market right now. So I appreciate that the published statistics are showing things about, share of foreign born and the like. Those statistics, while, I don't mean to impugn them at all. These are large changes that are happening right now, and those statistics are probably not fully catching up with what's happening. My guess, my analysis suggests that the surge in immigration over the past few years is actually still pushing up labor supply. And the reason I say that is because there's a big swath of immigrants that are new to this country that are eligible to apply for work permits. And we have seen a surge in those work permit applications. And while approval rates are down, like for example, between April and May, this administration approved almost 700,000 work permits for recent immigrants. And so I think one of the reasons that we've seen such strong employment numbers over the past few months, on average 150,000, I think that is because labor supply is still being pushed up by the recent surge in immigration, but we can't ride that wave forever. And we're probably just about at the moment that increase in labor supply comes to an end, and we start seeing payroll employment numbers that are closer to like 30,000 a month.
Really?
10,000 a month. In a year or so, we could start seeing payroll employment numbers that are negative.
I don't see a lot of MAGA people running to go fill those construction jobs. So Trump, not only does he not care enough about the American worker to try to solve this problem, instead he tries to say how he doesn't want to have any effect on his wealthy investors' portfolios, but also he's hurting builders' ability to build more houses, even if they want to, because he is rounding up and detaining their employees.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to add the MeidasTouch podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts for new updates every single day.